Hey guys, what is up? My name is Landon and welcome to the Jersey Zone. So today I'm going to be continuing to do some predictions for the 2021-2022 season. I'm doing the Central Division today. I've already done a video on the Pacific Division, so if you guys want to check it out, I'll leave a link to that in the description down below. Now, like I said in that video, these are just my own opinions. If you guys disagree with me, that's completely okay. I'll probably be very wrong with most of these predictions. Anyways, let's get into the predictions. At number 8 in the division here, I do have the Arizona Coyotes. So unfortunately, their first season being in the Central Division, I do have them finishing last. It's pretty obvious that they are tanking for this season. They have sold off so much in the offseason so far, getting rid of their goaltending, Kemper and Ranta. They got rid of Garland as well as trading off OEL. So they've gotten rid of a ton in this offseason here. And then they've also brought in guys like Gostisbehere, who Philadelphia has kind of been wanting to trade for a little while here. And then they've also brought in Roussel, Eriksson, and Beagle, who don't really have that great of contracts. And then for their goaltending situation, they've also brought in Kochenar and Hutton. So yeah, I don't really have a ton to say about the Arizona Coyotes other than they're very obviously tanking. They do have a ton of picks for this upcoming draft though, so that's really good for the Coyotes. I do hope that the rebuild doesn't really last that long. Like I said, they have a ton of picks, so hopefully that kind of speeds up the process here, but yeah, we'll have to see. Anyways, let's move on. Now at 7th place, I had the Nashville Predators. Now, I will say I don't see the Nashville Predators as rebuilding, but I do see that they maybe are trying to retool. They moved out a couple of guys like Ryan Ellis, Arvidsson, Halla, as well as losing Rinne to retirement as well. So they've lost a couple of key guys, I would say, on that roster there. And then they brought in Myers as well as David Riddick to kind of back up UC Saros. Now, the only place that I really see the Nashville Predators needing help is their forwards. I think their defense is fantastic still. Even losing Ryan Ellis, I still think they have a very, very good defense. And I still think their goaltending is pretty decent as well. I hope Riddick kind of has a bounce back season. He hasn't been playing great for the past couple of seasons, especially with the Flames itself. He barely played with the Toronto Maple Leafs at all. So I'm hoping he kind of has a bounce back year this year. And I do think Saros is ready for that starter position. He's kind of flirted a little bit with it the past couple of seasons. And like I said, I think he's ready for it. So their defense and their goaltending, I think, are completely fine. It's really that offense that they really need to improve on. And they do have a couple of really big contracts on that offense that really aren't doing much, like Duchesne and Johansson. Like, those guys really need to step it up for the Nashville Predators to maybe make a little bit of a push. But like I said, I think they're kind of in the middle of a retool here and maybe hoping that they can kind of turn it around in the next couple of seasons, because I don't think they're that bad of a team. They just really need to improve on that offense. At number 6 in the division, I have the Dallas Stars. Now, with the Stars, I have the same issues with them that I've kind of had for the past couple of seasons, and that is their forward depth, once again, kind of like the Nashville Predators. For me, they just really have struggled scoring, in my opinion. They've had it for a couple of years, even going as far back as the 2020 season, where they did go to the Stanley Cup Finals. For me, I really did not count on them to go to the Stanley Cup Finals because of their offense, but I will say in the playoffs, their scoring depth really kind of showed up for them. So if that can happen again and they can stretch it out for an entire season, then I can see them making the playoffs for sure. And I also find it very strange that they added Holtby in the offseason here, because yes, I know Ben Bishop is going to be on IR for the start of the season here, but I find it strange that they kept Hudobin then, because I think Jake Ottinger is ready. I think he played really well last season, so I think he's ready for at least a backup position in the NHL, but they kept Hudobin, so I would think that it would be Holtby and Hudobin, and then Ottinger would play in the AHL. And I just kind of find that strange. Like I said, personally, I would prefer Ottinger to be as a backup, kind of maybe 1A, 1B with Holtby. Holtby didn't have a great year last season anyways. He hasn't had a great past couple of seasons, so I don't know. I just kind of found it strange. I even would have thought it was okay if they just kept Hudobin and Ottinger like they had last year. I know Hudobin didn't have a fantastic season last year, but it was just a little bit strange for me, in my opinion. I think they would have been fine keeping that tandem. Now, for their defense, I think their defense is fine. They did lose Alexiak. I believe it was to Seattle. I'm pretty sure, at least. But they lost him, which will hurt a little bit. But with guys like Klingberg and Heiskanen, I think they're still fine on that back end. It's really just that forward group where they haven't really added a ton. They did add Glendening, but they also lost Dickinson and Cogliano as well. So I don't know, just for me personally, I don't really see them going that far in the standings here. Moving on to number 5, I have the Minnesota Wild. Now, I will say, I do have the Wild making the playoffs here. If you guys watched my previous video talking about the Pacific, I do only have 3 Pacific teams making the playoffs, and I have 5 Central teams, so I do have both wild cards going to the Central Division. Now, with the Wild, the big thing with them is that Kaprizov actually did re-sign. If he didn't re-sign, I maybe have had them lower than the Dallas Stars, but with him re-signing, I do see them kind of squeezing it out and getting a little bit ahead of the Dallas Stars here. But I do kind of find their kind of situation really weird. They did something very strange in the offseason. They also bought out Parise and Suter, which was a very strange move in my opinion, because it basically made it so they have to go all out this season. They need to do something this season so bad, because if they don't do anything this season, next season, both cap hits for Parise and Suter, their dead cap space that is going to no players, it's just basically removed from their cap space, is $6 million each. So that's $12 million of dead cap space. And then the next 2 seasons after that, it's $7 million each. So $14 million of dead cap space that they just can't use. It is crazy that they decided to do that. It's very confusing to me because they basically have to go all out this season and they don't really have a ton of room to do anything this season. They only have $2 million left in their cap space here, and all they really did was sign Kaprizov and they brought in Goligoski, and other than that, I don't really think they brought in anyone else, or anyone else of note at least. They really didn't do a whole lot for buying out Parise and Suter, so I'm very interested to watch the Minnesota Wild this season because, like I said, for the next 3 years after this one, it's going to be rough for them, and it's going to be really difficult. At number 4, I have a team that I really think could surprise some people this season. I have the Chicago Blackhawks. For me, I really like what the Chicago Blackhawks did this offseason in terms of on ice, not off ice. Off ice issues, whole other thing. On ice, though, I really like what they did. Bringing in Marc-Andre Fleury, I think, is a huge add. Before last season, going into it, I was really skeptical about their goaltending, but then Lankinen came up and he played fantastic, and I think he'll be a great goaltender, and I think he'll be a great backup for Marc-Andre Fleury there. I think they'll be a very good tandem, and Jonathan Toews is coming back as well, so their goaltending being upgraded and their captain coming back, I just really see kind of the Chicago Blackhawks being a pretty decent team this season. They were pretty good for a decent amount of last season as well. At least they were surprisingly decent. Obviously, they didn't quite make the playoffs, and they kind of struggled, I would say, especially against those higher teams in that Central Division last season. But for this season, like I said, I can definitely see them being a little bit of a sneaker team and a little bit of a surprising team, and that's why I have them at 4th in the division. At number 3, I have the Winnipeg Jets. Now, last season was a little bit strange for the Winnipeg Jets. They were very consistent for pretty much the entire year until like the last, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Then they really tailed off. They were really bad for the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Then in the playoffs, they swept the Edmonton Oilers, and then they got swept by the Montreal Canadiens. So I think the last little bit of the season there was really strange for the Winnipeg Jets, and it kind of made me like forget how consistent of a team they actually were throughout basically the entire regular season last year. That being said, I still think they're a pretty good team. They didn't really lose a whole lot. They basically lost Poolman and Bressois. They also brought in Schmidt as well, who I really like Schmidt, and I do think their defense needed improving, so I like that addition for them. And their forward group is still really good. The only kind of concern or question that I really have, especially with that forward group, is Pierre-Luc Dubois. How is he going to play? Because obviously in Columbus last year, he was barely trying. He really didn't want to be there, and so that's why he got traded. But after he got traded, I really wouldn't say he was that great. He really wasn't the player the Jets were thinking they were getting, so hopefully last year was just a little bit of an odd year for him. Maybe it was just a little bit of an off year, and hopefully this season he'll kind of improve a little bit and get back to the player that he can actually be. But other than that, I do think the Jets are a pretty decent team, and that's why I have them coming in at 3rd. At number 2 in the division, I do have the St. Louis Blues. Some of the guys that are out of the St. Louis Blues are Dunn, Hoffman, Schwartz, Sammy Blais as well, but they did bring in Buchnevich as well as Saad, so I think those are pretty decent additions, but I do think they lost more than they actually added. That being said, I still think the St. Louis Blues are a good team. They do still have Tarasenko, which was a little bit of a strange thing because he did ask for a trade request. He wanted out of the St. Louis Blues organization. They just really couldn't find anyone to trade for him. And I'm assuming a lot of that was because the Blues weren't really getting back what they thought they should get back for Tarasenko. I'm assuming that was the issue. Now, Tarasenko did come out and say that he'll still play for the Blues. Obviously, he wanted to get traded, but it's obviously not happening, so he'll stick with the Blues. He'll still play for them. I really hope that he has a healthy season this year because, man, that man has been riddled with injuries, and he's a very good player, and I still hope that he is that player that he used to be because, you know, he's had a lot of wrist injuries here, and I really hope it hasn't affected his shot that much because that man is a goal scorer, and he's very good, so I hope that he still kind of has that in him here and that those wrist injuries haven't hurt him that much. Now, I will say the biggest kind of question mark that I have, at least with the St. Louis Blues, is their goaltending. They have Binnington and Husso, and that is going to be a very interesting goaltending tandem to watch. Binnington obviously had that fantastic run in 2019, getting his team to the playoffs and obviously winning the Stanley Cup as well. Fantastic run for Binnington, but since then, he hasn't really been the same. He hasn't really been as good since that season. Husso didn't really have a great year last year either, so that is going to be very interesting to watch for me. I'll see kind of how that plays out because if their goaltending kind of falters and Binnington and Husso don't really have that bounce back season, I could see them falling down in the standings here. I would still have them making the playoffs, but I could see them maybe going down as far as 5th place, depending on how that goaltending kind of plays out. Now at number 1 in the division, I have the Colorado Avalanche. It's kind of the same as the Pacific Division, where it's the Avalanche's division to lose. They should get first place. I wouldn't really think that it's going to be that close in my opinion. They're just such a strong team in every aspect of the game. Even with losing Grubauer, they added Kemper, who I think is a very, very good goaltender, so I really don't see them losing this division. I really think this is basically a shoo-in for first place for the Colorado Avalanche. Now, how are they going to do in the playoffs? We'll kind of see about that, but that being said, I do have them coming first for the Central Division. So that is going to be it for me. Let me know your guys' picks for the Central Division in the comments down below. And if you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like and make sure to subscribe to the channel. The next 2 divisions will be up in just a couple of days here. I will be doing the Metro first, and then I'll be doing the Atlantic, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Also, make sure to follow me on my Instagram and my Twitter, at the Jersey Zone YT on Instagram and at the Jersey Zone on Twitter. Links are in the description down below. Like I said, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.